It is great to have Daniel James back with me. He is celebrating the 35th anniversary of Yell, hitting the top 10 of the UK charts with Instant Replay. And to celebrate, he's just released a new single, Promises. Welcome, Daniel.
Oh, Claire, it's lovely to be back with you again. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, always welcome. And what a lovely way to start the year. Cheers. Yeah, I should have brought my cup of tea up. I love drinking tea, just like you.
Who said it's tea? Who said it's tea?
Well. So what a great way to start the year with this new single, new music. But I think before we talk about Promises, let's talk about Yell first, shall we? So let's go right back. So formed in 1988, signed by industry bigwig Simon Cowell. What was that like for you?
It was hard work. We'd been going for about 18 months before Simon came on board. And by the time he came on board, I'd written an hour's worth of material. We'd been doing touring up. We'd been playing clubs across the UK at night.
Good way to cut your teeth, isn't it, doing all of that?
Well, ducking the pies. I can remember playing a gig in Scunthorpe, and we were backstage, and we had a driver, and this guy burst into the changing room and grabbed me by the throat, and he said, "You keep your hands off my wife." Now, bear in mind, I'd only been on stage. We'd done 2 gigs that night, and what happened was, you'd arrive, you'd kind of come in the back, the guy would say, "Oh, hello, nice to meet you," shove you in a room and say, "You've got 2 minutes," and there'd be a drink, you'd quickly have a drink, and then you'd be on, you'd come off, go back to the changing room, and then you'd literally put your clothes on and leave. So I'd not met anybody. And he went, "Oi, keep your hands off my missus."
It's because his missus really liked you, isn't it? That's why, when she was watching you on stage.
I think she'd missed out on her Specsavers appointment, but nevertheless. But, so we basically had learnt the ropes. And in the lunch times, we went to schools. I think we were the first group to do the lunch clubs. When we would go into schools, kids would have their lunch. Now, it had to be the dining hall, the proper school hall, or the gym. And we'd come out and we'd knock out 3 or 4, 5, 6 songs for them after they'd had their lunches. And I mean, it was brilliant.
What a fantastic time!
We were knackered,
they don't do that in the schools now, do they?
I know. Can you imagine what have you got today? Well, we've got maths, English, PE, and Yell. The best thing about it, though, the kids went bananas because obviously they have to be all straight laced, and then we turn up and the teachers are down the side, and the kids. The first song comes on, and the kids are going. They're wondering if they can get up and go a bit wild, And by the third song, they're all up and it's manic. But the best thing about it was, apart from the fact we built up a great fan club in the days and in the nights, the dinner ladies, we worked so hard. We were like 2 whippets. We were so skinny. And we turn up, and before we started, if we went past the dining hall, you'd smell the food, right? And this lovely dinner lady, they're all lovely, and they go, "Oh, boys, you look so thin. We'll put some dinner aside for you," And we'd come off stage, sweating buckets, and all the kids would go back to classes, and we'd be the only 2 sat in the dining hall. And they'd come out with mince and dumplings. And you remember the puddings at school, with the pink icing and the
I remember semolina coming out, and I'm not sure about that.
Oh, no, we didn't get... We had chocolate pudding, and all the lunch clubs just fed us up. It kept us going. So basically, we were up to steam. We signed to Simon Cowell, and he just put loads of money in it. But the problem it's a bit like the recent documentary that Louis Theroux's done. He did a documentary about boy bands recently. I wish he called me. I could have made his hair curl. And also Robbie Williams has a movie out. He touches on it. Quite often when you're in one of those groups with a record company that are very interested in the commercial side of the industry, and in ours, Simon Cowell being a very big businessman, he wanted instant money. And so you're pushed down a route you wouldn't normally go down. I'd written, an album's worth of material of really great songs, and there were no opportunities for those to be used because it was just drummed into us that we were going down a certain road.
Yeah.
And like Robbie Williams says, quite often you have no say in what's going on. for quite a long time, and you're put under an enormous pressure. So on one
It
hand,
must be hard, yeah.
well, on one hand, you've got the glitz and the glamour.
Yeah.
We did 30 magazine covers for the first single. 30. You know, can you imagine all those dartboards with the pictures on with people going, take that?
Everybody loved you, didn't they? They loved you.
but, you know, all the glamour, flying around the world, being on top of the pops. But the downside is that you sometimes have very little say in anything that goes on, including who you work with. You know, I mean, I remember sitting in a meeting once and I had a cross as an earring. And the person that was running the record company, or one of them, had hired a stylist. I don't know whether many people know that quite a lot of bands have stylists. But the band pay for this. But the band don't know when the stylist comes in that that's going to come off the back end. That's going to come off the money they make. Anyway,
I see.
so the stylist comes in and the record company usually give them ultimate power. So you'll go shopping with a particular stylist, which we did. They're probably not all like this, but we went with a stylist who'd done another group, very sort of another young male group. And when he came over to style us, he brought all that over with him. And I'm thinking, well, that's not us. So I kind of didn't want to be wearing the things that he was trying to push me to wear. And I remember sitting down in a meeting and the head of the record company was there and he was there and I was here and my partner was there. And basically, because I wouldn't do as I was told, they were like threatening me and saying, and also you can take that pathetic earring out. And then they just basically went through everything I had on and tore me to pieces.
Wow.
And you're sitting there and you're getting smaller and smaller and smaller in your chair, you know? So there are, although
that's
as
the
I say,
downsides, yeah.
There are, yeah. I mean, I remember when we were, you know, we'd been all over, we'd been to the Grammys in LA and we were touring and we were on stage in Hammersmith. And, it was manic, fabulously manic. My family were there. The first time my family had been able to come and see me.
You must miss, that's another side of it as well, isn't it? That you're away from your loved ones and actually you're very young still, really, and still learning in life, but then you're catapulted into this fame and being told by, older people how you should dress, what you should do, what you should behave like.
One Direction. The tragedy that's happened there is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Now, when I was pummeled, I mean, for one example, we were on stage in Hammersmith and a very famous producer came on stage and took the microphone and it was packed. And I'd written an album's worth of material. As much as we were doing Instant Replay, which was great, bear in mind, Instant Replay was written by Dan Hartman, who was a very talented musician and producer. So it wasn't a piece of tat. And Let's Go Round Again, the Average White Band. But I'm standing on stage and we're doing our bit. And this producer walks on, gets hold of the mic and says, how about we have a bum wiggling competition? A bum wiggling competition? I'm a grown man. So I said, now bear in mind, he had the power to crush people. And I've seen it. And I said, no, that's not for us. We didn't do it. I wasn't spoken to for 3 months.
Oh,
I was sent to Coventry for 3 months. And I was told that unless I grovelled and I apologised to that man, I would never work with him. Strangest thing is I didn't want to work with him, and I think I did it on purpose, funnily enough. I ended up having to work with him, but I didn't want to work with him because he ran a sausage machine and I didn't want to be another sausage. But I said, no, I wasn't rude. I just said, no, it wasn't me. It wasn't, can you imagine going on stage and saying to, I don't know, a band, let's have a bum wiggling competition. I mean, someone could be lucky to get out live if you suggested some bands.
I think things have changed as well nowadays, haven't they? There's a lot more awareness of how people were treated then and how you have to have a duty of care, really. You're a human being after all, and these bands sort of have the fame, but then there's also that dark side as well, isn't there? And really, you also you felt that, I suppose, even more so when all of that suddenly stopped for you. You know, how do you make sense of that? How do you suddenly recover from all of that when you just dropped?
There's a little film goes through your head of everything from day one to day dot, and you replay Germany, Los Angeles, Top of the Pops, Lunch Club. You know, that little video goes on your head, and then you suddenly get to the end, and you've lost everything because I had no power in the ending of the group. It was taken away from me, and I lost my home. I was buying a home for my parents, and I couldn't find anybody for 48 hours. Nobody would answer the phone to me. I had to. You know how I found out? There were fans. Listen, this sounds a bit big-headed, but this happens to lots of groups. I had fans like camping outside the flat. My mum and dad would come down, two working class from the northeast. They'd be baffled. You know, they'd say, those poor girls out there, they're freezing cold. Should we take them a cup of tea down? You know, but my mum and dad would come down, and I opened my window and looked down and waved at them, and they said, "Have you seen the paper today?" And I said, "No." And they shoved a paper through my door, and it was in one of the tabloids. I didn't know. Nobody had told me. So imagine you get your job taken away from you, but nobody tells you, and you read it in the paper.
Yeah.
Imagine you spend 48 hours trying to contact someone. There's no union. There's no, as you say, customer care. There's no what's it?
Duty of care.
Yeah, and there's no personnel officer.
No, no HR, nothing like that.
I remember a couple of years later opening the paper and seeing some famous star who said, "God, I hit rock bottom when I got dropped, and I thank God for Elton John. He helped me." I thought, I wish I'd had bloody Elton John's number. I'd have rang him up just to get me through it. So basically, I was knocked to the floor in quite a nasty way, and your self-esteem is kind of sabotaged, really.
Well, so, it would, yeah.
But that's not to take away. I mean, I don't want to, you know, nobody's getting the violins out here. I wasn't down a mine. You know, I wasn't peas and then got sacked, because people have hard jobs. I'm under no illusions that I was given. I worked for it, but I had wonderful opportunities, and that I don't regret a minute of. But I think the lack of being able to choose things and the lack of power, maybe you're right. Maybe it's being redressed a little bit now. But Robbie mentions it in his film. The things he was forced to endure. And as I say, some of the boys in the Louis Theroux documentary mention it as well. So it was a journey.
Indeed. But isn't it brilliant how, you know, you picked yourself up, you know, you moved away, you picked yourself up, you did lots of other things, and you've done theatre, TV, presenting, you know, you do your radio now. So you've continued to kind of work in the industry, haven't you, really? You know, you haven't gone out, and I suppose it would be hard being a pop star and then suddenly going to have what I call, you know, an ordinary job.
It took me years, though.
Yeah,
the truth of the matter is, I had a breakdown.
Yeah,
I lost everything, and I didn't work. And I ended up moving to New York because nobody knew me there. We'd worked in LA, and as I said, we'd recorded with Michael J. We produced my film, but nobody knew me. And I got to New York, and I was a total stranger. And it was such a relief, because I was battered to pieces. And I just floated around New York, and then eventually got myself an agent, and bumped into someone and ended up in a play, in a workshop of a play. And that slowly, I went from this, my self-esteem was like that. And it just slowly crept back and crept back and crept back.
Yeah.
And after 18 months, I came home, and I think I knew who I was again.
Like a rebirth again, sort of planting a seed to grow that confidence back again after having it shattered.
Yeah, and I am definitely, I know I keep talking about it, and my PA Carol screams at me to get this book written, because it's not a point of being vindictive about anybody. It's just, I'd like people to know the journey and tell the journey, because, you know, when I was a kid like you, and like a lot of people over 25, we used to rush home on a Thursday to watch Top of the Pops.
Top of the Pops was everything.
Yeah, and you'd go into school the next day, everybody would be talking about who'd been on there.
Yeah.
The thrill of being on there was amazing, but there is another side to it. And I think people, because when I was a kid, I'd watch Top of the Pops. You never think how they got there. They're just there.
They're already there. Yeah. Yeah. And you just think it's all roses, don't you? I think it's all the best times ever. Yeah.
There are roses, but there are quite a thorn. There
But
are
there's
quite a lot of thorns.
thorns, lots of them.
Anyway, I'm
Well,
here, and
yeah.
thankfully, new material.
It's fantastic. So yeah, so 35 years fast forward then, and
Well
then you're
done.
still writing and recording new music. Now, I'm loving this latest single. So let's talk about your ideas then, how you came to write Promises.
Well, I always write about things that I hear, stories I hear, or things that happen to me. And it was a couple I knew that were having trouble. One kept letting the other one down, but it was kind of at the beginning of their courtship. It was just fun things like they wouldn't turn up or they'd be late. But when their relationship became more serious and they had a child, it was getting really, really bad. And they'd disappear off and let them down, and it became very, very bad. And in the end, um, they broke up, and the person that walked away, their confidence had been diminished because they'd been let down so many times. And they were standing in a pub one day and they lifted the pint, and a mate of theirs and I remember standing there watching him, and he said, "Oh, you're all right, mate, you're still standing tall." And
Yeah.
that line stuck in my
Yeah.
head. And also they found out that the other person had quite a few secrets and had been withholding things. I mean, these things happen in a lot of relationships, you sometimes think people are what they are and they turn out to be somebody else. And some people can talk it through and rescue it, and some people can't. But I remember things in my head like secrets that you keep and I'm still standing tall. And I just went away and wrote about it. But you know what, Claire? There is a little bit of me in there as well.
Oh, is
Because
there? Yeah.
when you get to the end, well, when you hear me singing, I'm still standing tall, especially that very last line of the song, it's sung with, I didn't really realize it till afterwards, but it's sung with such gusto.
Mm.
I think it's me doing that to the people that
Yeah.
tried to
Yeah.
kill me.
Because now you're back and you're mature and you've learned how things were and how things are, and you've managed to conquer.
I've managed to survive, which is enough. And I'd
Yeah.
say to anybody watching that's going through a tough time, that's either through work, because this can happen in any walk of life, in an office, in a job, driving lorries. You can be either beaten down by circumstances or bullies or people or things going wrong in your life, and everything piles in on you. And I just say to anybody that's going through that now, I know it's hard, but just try and talk to somebody. The Samaritans, I've called them in the past and they worked for me. Mind is another great one
Yeah.
because they're strangers and you can tell strangers anything. They're not going to tell your mates or your family. It's great to tell your family if you can, but sometimes they're just too
Sometimes
close
it
to you.
is easier for people, yeah, to talk to somebody that they don't know.
If you're going through it, you're not
Mm.
alone.
Yeah.
Because I went so far down, I didn't ever think I'd pick myself back up again. So it's
Mm.
great to be where I am now. I've got another single ready to come out maybe early summer, which is a
Oh,
ballad,
brilliant. Yeah.
and I produced it with
Great.
a lovely man. You see, I want to work with new people, Claire.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
I work with a guy called Isaac Ray on Promises. He's great keyboard player. He's great with sound. He's a sound technician, and I love the Heritage Chart. I've had
Yes.
hits on the
Mike
Heritage
Reed's.
Chart.
Absolutely.
Promises has gone in this week as the highest new entry. And if people
Yeah.
want to vote, www.heritagechart.co.uk, please vote for me. But I don't want to be just people saying to me, oh, yeah, I can tell you 80s and 90s because all your records sound like that. I love what's going on now.
Yeah.
And if you listen to Promises, it's got modern sounds and
It
modern
has
things.
actually. Yeah. Even just like the way it starts, it's got that very modern vibe with it.
Yeah, I was at Butlins in November, and there were some Yell fans there, and they're married and they've got kids. And
Yeah.
this couple came over and they followed me in Yell, and they said, "This is their daughter." And I said, "Hello." And she said, "I love your stuff." And I said, "What, the Yell stuff?" And she said, "Yeah, my mum and dad played it when I was growing up." She said, "I said, hang on a minute." I got my phone out and I played her Promises. She loved it. I mean, she really loved it. And she said, "That could be anybody in the charts now."
Yeah.
But that's what I want. I want to be contemporary.
Yeah.
I respect what I've done. I've
Yeah.
just re-recorded Instant Replay. I've just re-recorded Let's Go Round Again because I want to go out and do some gigs. I'm doing a charity gig at Hampton Wick Yacht Club on the 22nd of February for Anthony and Nolan Blood Charity and another charity. And I'm doing May the 4th, which I think is a bank holiday, Clitheroe Football Club I'm playing there, doing a gig there. So if anybody wants to book me, you know, pint a pint.
Fantastic, yeah.
So I'm re-recording all the material. I want to get out
Brilliant.
there, but I want to be contemporary. And as I say, I was down in Wales recently, and I've written a lovely ballad called "Wrap Your Arms Around Me."
Well, I can't wait to hear that coming out next.
Well, you know, I've gone that way with Promises.
Yeah,
I've gone that way with Wrap Your Arms. And
well,
I'll
that's good
steal
for the variety.
from the Corgis. Yeah, I'll steal from the Corgis. You know, everyone's got to learn sometime.
Oh, yeah.
Really talented man.
Yeah.
Co-produced it with him. So I just want to move on. I just want to move through.
Exciting stuff then, isn't it? So this will all be your next album. And what else have you got lined up? So you've got gigs coming up, you're playing concerts, charity events. Do you know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see you do the Masked Singer.
Wow, I never thought of that.
Wouldn't that be brilliant?
Yeah.
You've got
what, Mike Reed? Well, Claire, you have read. Finish that sentence. You've got just
I was just going to say you've got such a distinctive voice that I reckon I'd know it was you when you were singing, no matter what you dress up as.
Said the same thing on radio last week. He said when Promises finished, he said, "You know what?" He says, "There's a few artists when you put them on, you know it's them." And he said, "I always know it's Daniel when it's on." He didn't. He was going to add at the end because 6 cats turned up at the door howling, but he didn't. But yeah, what a great idea. Yeah. So I'm just up for enjoying myself. I want to create new songs. I've got merch on the go now. If anybody's interested in any, I've got Promises T-shirts. I've got hats. I've got tote bags from the materials. So go to my website, www.thedanieljames.com.
It's The Daniel James, isn't it? Yeah, thedanieljames.com.
Well, you know why? Because the guy called Dan James plays for Leeds.
Yes, when they were a footballer.
They were promoting the Clitheroe football game. You know that I'm playing at Clitheroe FC.
Yeah.
And they put on the poster Dan James from Yale. The next day, I got loads on social media from anti-Leeds United fans battering the life out of me. So I got in touch with the pros. I said, "Daniel, make it Daniel. I'm getting mullered here because they think the footballer's got a double life." So yeah, I'd love it if people, came along to the gigs. And if, as I say, if anyone's got any gigs, any promoters watching, I'm up and ready.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you'll get lots of people wanting to have you play, their festivals, those 80s, 90s weekenders. You cross over both, don't you? And and go out and do some sort of, theatre tours with different artists as well. Be great.
As I say, I think it just takes, I just need to break the ice, get out there, a couple of them, and then people will be, go, "Oh, God, yeah," So fingers crossed, it'll be great.
Yeah. Well, Daniel, best of luck with Promises, but all these things to follow as well, because it sounds super exciting. It sounds like 2025 is going to be your year.
Well, I've not released in a year, so I've I've been putting it in the bank.
Yeah.
So I'm ready now.
The time is now. Yeah. And as you say, we can follow you on your socials and we can go to your website, thedanieljames.com, to stay up to date with your plans.
Thanks for having me on, Claire. I appreciate all your support. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Anytime.